Welcome, Dragon Slayers, and get ready for another season, another episode, sorry, of Dragon Slayers, where we're going to be slaying the dragon on ancient philosophy. Here's a refresher for the rules. This time, a little bit slightly adjusted so that we can continue to play. We're gonna continue to fine tune it until we get this right. But for now, here's the gist of it. There's two players in per game. Each one of you is we're gonna roll the roulette. Whoever wins by luck the first spot is going to be able to pick the first question. Once the first question is being picked, if that question is answered properly, the question gets erased. But if the question is answered incorrectly, the other player has a possibility to steal some of those points back. We're gonna go through all 5 questions, and then once all the questions have been answered correctly and all the points have been grabbed, we're gonna go into the sparring contest. The sparring contest is pretty simple. We're just going to do a little bit of opponent processing. You guys are going to face the dragon, and he's going to answer whatever the opposite of your statement you pick your statement to be, and your opponent is going to be able to vote or give you a rating on how well you did. Also, another thing to consider is the fool, myself, I'm like a wild card. So if I see that somebody is not being fair in their rating, then the fool has the ability to grant +2 points to, the player who's been cheated on, or if there's ever a draw, we can do that, but it's all a matter of luck. So, you might be able to, get away with not been tricked with the fool, but it's a gamble, and people might not like you so much if you do so keep that in mind. And without further ado, here we go, guys. A little bit on the point system. If you get a correct question, you get +3 points. Incorrect question, you get 0. Boo. You get to rate your opponent between 1 and 5, and so here we go. Oh, by the way, as well, whoever wins this whole event throughout the whole season of the year might get a chance of winning a whole year of PA. If you already have a lifetime membership, you might get something along the lines of that. But more on that later. And here we go. Game 2, Ancient Philosophy, Part 1. There we go. Can you guys see? Okay, we're gonna do a reroll again. One more time. It's rolling, and we got Tom. All right, Tom. Congratulations. Here are your topic options. You got Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, Xenophanes, or Heraclitus. Which topic would you like to pick?
I'm gonna go with Thales.
Thales.
Yep.
Here we go. Thales suggested that the primordial source of everything was water. These had epistemological and ontological implications about how we learn to see the world. This makes scholars consider Thales the father or founder of which field? A. Materialism. B. Idealism. C. Naturalism. D. Determinism.
Oh God. I want to say naturalism, but yeah, I'd say naturalism.
Naturalism. Locked in? And...
Yay.
Congratulations, Tom! You got +3 points. You were absolutely right. His contribution as starting to see the world and try to explain it with observable evidence, so to speak, or trying to think of the world outside of just mere a priori thinking, but actually try to see what things kind of influences around us and try to get to the bottom of things, had this type of implication. So you're absolutely right, Tom. +3 points. Next question, Khaden, you get to pick. Thales is out of the game. Now you get to pick Anaximander, Anaximenes. Heraclitus, here we go. Yeah. And the question is, Heraclitus held that all things were in constant flux, for which he proposed a metaphorical arche, in contrast with his contemporaries, who actually meant to describe the originate material of existence. This was fire. He is also said to have come up with the doctrine of the Logos, which is A. An impersonal force that gathers everything into a coherent whole while maintaining the distinct many that form its parts. B. The logic that is necessary to understand philosophical inquiry. C. Another translation for word, which denotes the power of speaking things into existence. Or D. The power of using heuristics, such as bounded rationality, when applying logic to understand complex subjects.
I'll have to read this closely.
Sorry?
Let's go with B.
B. Are you sure? The logic that is necessary to understand philosophical inquiry? I'm gonna read them back again to you. A. An impersonal force that gathers everything into a coherent whole while maintaining the distinct many that form its parts. B. The logic that is necessary to understand philosophical inquiry. C. Another translation for word, which denotes the power of speaking things into existence. And D. The power of using heuristics, such as rationality, when applying logic to understand complex subjects.
Impersonal force that gathers everything into a coherent whole while maintaining the distinct many that forms its parts, or the logic that is necessary to understand philosophical inquiry. And the Logos, he said, as is said to have come up with the doctrine that the Logos, which is logic. And I'm gonna go with B on that one, based on what I know
B?
from the lecture. Yeah.
Absolutely.
My best is between A and B, but I'm gonna go with B on this.
Oh my goodness!
Khaden. Oh man, it was.
I understand. Yeah, I understand why it was a little bit of a tricky one to pick. Logic absolutely has to do with logos, but the biggest definition that he provided was the thing that actually gathers everything into a coherent whole to be able to give it a structure and meaning.
Yes, it sustains the flux. Yeah.
Absolutely. While maintaining all the parts to be able to continue in flux, everything maintains its coherent whole. Absolutely, Khaden. You're absolutely right. And so, with that brings us back to Tom. Tom, which one are you going to go for? You can steal the question, knowing the answer now, or you can go for another one. It's completely up to you.
Another question. That's.
I really like this because you're not just testing the intelligence or what the person knows, because you're also testing the fairness of a person, isn't it? So it's not just about knowing. So I really like this. I like how you created this thing.
Thank you, Tom.
So I'm gonna go with Xenophanes.
Absolutely, Tom. We're gonna go with Xenophanes. And the question is, Xenophanes is known for criticizing the Greeks for having anthropomorphic gods that resembled Greeks themselves, and criticized Homer and Hesiod for ascribing deeds that even mortal men would find disgraceful. Another of his thoughtful contributions was: A. God is justice and everything was made and judged. It was made and judged according to its function. B. There is a God for each one of our internal drives that doesn't necessarily have an anthropomorphic shape. C. Myth is just as important as logos. Or D. God didn't reveal anything to humans from the beginning, but it's possible for humans to discover better through searching, although nobody can truly ever see the absolute.
I know that he's an atheist. I know that he's an atheist. But I just it's either B or D. I wanna go with B. B is kinda a bit of a Freudian interpretation. I don't think he was into anything with internal drives. But my problem with D is God didn't reveal everything to humans from the beginning. The problem with D, it's about metaphysics. No idealism. Was he into idealism?
I don't know, Tom. You gotta make a decision.
when I think I don't talk for myself. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, absolutely. This is wonderful. Take your time.
Nobody can ever
Doctor, I
see the
think
absolute. That's a numinous thing. I don't. It's possible for humans to discover better through researching. I want to go with. Oh God. I want to go with D. I feel like it's wrong, but I'll go with D.
Absolutely, Tom. We'll go with D. God didn't reveal everything to humans from the beginning, but it's possible for humans to discover better through searching, although nobody can ever see the absolute. And the
I feel like
answer
that's Buddhist, but I
is
feel like it's wrong.
correct.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't explicitly mentioned in the lecture. This one was a little bit of a tricky one, but
Yeah.
when you study Xenophon's further on fragment 18 and 34, fragment 18, he says, "By no means did the gods reveal all things to mortals from the beginning, but in time, by searching, they discover better." And in fragment 34, he mentions, "No man has seen, nor will anyone know the truth about the gods and the things I speak of. For even if a person should in fact say what is absolutely the case, nevertheless he himself does not know, but fashions belief over all things." So he's, in a sense, kind of like the father of the whole skeptic tradition. Even though very, very faintly and very, very far away, he is one of the first people that started to put all of these the first tastes of the hermeneutics of suspicion out there, putting the suspicion on obviously all of the Greek gods, and then kind of like wondering a little bit more about what really is the reality and can be explored from a different perspective.
Cool.
What was he the father? What
Absolutely. Now,
tradition was he the
Khaden.
father of? No,
He's not exactly the father of that tradition, but he starts to have the first few feints of skepticism with these fragments. Fragment 18 and fragment 34 show how he, gives birth to this sort of like a skepticism or skeptical tradition, so to speak.
Yeah, laying the seeds for the skeptical tradition. Okay,
Khaden,
is it my turn?
it's absolutely your turn. You got Anaximander, Anaximenes, and Heraclitus. Which one would you like to go for?
I'll go back to Heraclitus again. I need to make up my. Give me another question on Heraclitus.
Absolutely, no problem. Here we go, Khaden. And you know the question. What would be
they're the exact same
answer?
question.
Is the exact same question.
Okay. Yeah, an impersonal force, obviously, that gathers everything into a coherent whole and maintains a distinct mini that form all its parts.
Absolutely, and the answer is correct, Khaden.
Now I remember that. I think of the image when I think of Heraclitus. It's that Christian image of the wheel. You got the center spoke, and everything is fluxed around the center spoke, but there's that stability holding all the parts into one. That's how I remember Heraclitus. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I love Heraclitus's philosophy for sure. It's one of the most fascinating thinkers, alongside with Xenophanes, actually, from this whole bunch, even though all of them are extremely, extremely fascinating for sure, to say the least.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, we're back to you. We got Anaximander and Anaximenes. Which one would you like to go for?
I actually don't know neither of them. Well, I do know a bit from the lecture, so I'm gonna go with Anaximander.
Absolutely, Anaximander it is. And we got, what is the notion of Aperion mean?
Ooh.
The idea that things can transmute from one element to another, from earth to water, from water to earth, from earth to air, and from air to fire. B, the idea that there are ideal forms which determine the way in which other shadows of that form are judged. C, an indeterminate, infinite, and boundless source that makes up anything. Or D, the metaphysical claim that the world is experienced through the rules that the mind imposes on it.
Okay. So I was wrong with Xenophanes a while ago with the final option. I don't think that was idealism. I meant skepticism, as you said, as you mentioned before. So I think this philosopher is more on the idealism. Or if I might be wrong. I'm gonna go with C. And in
C.
the determinate, the way you say it it seems wrong. But no, I'll go with C.
C, an indeterminate, infinite, and boundless source that makes up anything.
Yeah.
And the answer is correct. Aperion is actually in Greek means boundless or infinite. It has many, many meanings. And to him, this was actually the primordial force, this boundless, infinite source, because for something to be able to turn into anything, everything being so different, it had to be boundless and eternal and infinite. And so you're actually correct, Tom. It seems like you're very good at what would you say, discarding and playing your cards right. So absolutely, very good job, sir. All right, Khaden, we got Anaximenes, and so by process of elimination, here we go. Anaximenes held that his fundamental arche, like his teacher Anaximander, was also the animating force which gave everything its sustenance and order. But to him, the arche was A, Aperion, B, air, C, earth, or D, fire.
It's B, air. It's invisible, like air in it, so you can. He shares with Anaximander, his teacher, with the whole reasoning to make contact with the Aperion. So he takes that he relates that to air and says that is the fundamental thing driving everything, moving everything. So it's air.
Okay, we're gonna go with air. And the
Mm-hmm.
answer is correct. Khaden, you're absolutely right. They both had their fundamental arche is not precisely, all of these pre-Socratic thinkers from Ionia are always thought of seeing the world from a naturalist perspective, but they're not exactly materialists in the sense that they're completely atheists in that sense. They have also a sense of this type of mysticism behind every single of their arches, and all of them thought that these arches not only were the substance of things, but also were the things that actually were able to give order and judge all other things. So you're absolutely right when you pick up air, especially because he also regarded air as something that was absolutely necessary, because we actually needed to breathe. We actually need it for so many things, and it's everywhere, and it's also invisible, so it can take up any form and shape, right? Absolutely right. All right, and with that, here we go to some pairing. Are you guys ready for this? We're gonna meet the dragon in a second. So.
Oh, that was a good primer. I like that.
I'm glad. I'm glad that you guys are
Help me get
all
back in the
warmed
lecture.
up and ready to meet the dragon. Uh, so here we go. And three topics. You get to pick one of these ones. Since Tom is on the lead, Khaden gets to pick first. With logos and naturalism. Which one would you like to
The
go
Bard? Let's go with
for? The bar?
No, let's try naturalism. Sorry, naturalism.
Naturalism.
Yeah.
And here we go. The statement is the following. You get to pick either for or against this statement. If you're for, you have to defend the claim. If you're against, you have to refute it. The statement is, the seed planted by Thales, although incredibly necessary and important for the development of thought, was also what was the precondition to the materialist worldview that developed later as a commitment to only observable empirical data. Would you like to be for or against?
I'm reading it slowly. The seeds planted by Thales, although incredibly necessary and important for the development of thought, was also what was the precondition for the materialist worldview that developed later as a commitment to only observable empirical data. Yeah, I'll be for that today. Let's go for it.
Absolutely. So,
Come on a little bit.
give me just 1 second. I'm gonna call in the dragon.
Okay. I'm gonna debate this dragon. Okay.
All right, here we go, guys. I'm ready for this. All right, Khaden. So let me know. Well, show me what you got. Why is this the case for you?
I was looking at that dragon's jaw movement. That's a cool mask you got. Okay, Mr. Dragon. So, the seeds planted by Thales, although incredibly necessary and important for the development of thought, was also what was a precondition to the materialist worldview that developed later as a commitment to only observable empirical data. So, we know that the ancient Presocratics was so intertwined with their religions. They weren't atheistic. They believed in something higher or gods of some sorts. And that's actually really apparent in Thales, that fragment where we get that water is anarche, all is moist. But there's two additional fragments in that statement as well with that. It was all is moist. That was addressed in the lecture. But then there's also the lodestone has psyche. And everything is filled with gods. Very, very interesting statements. But how does that lead to a more materialist view? Well, the lodestone has psyche. Lodestones are these magnetic rocks, right? And so they are animated and they move. And he makes that comparison to psyche. And that becomes the roots for psychology. So what he is seeing here is that there is something material, some sort of force, equivalent to psyche that both animates the rocks but also animates us, and it is this moving principle that can be, you might say, reduced to a material, maybe a material we can't see, but something is there. And so he's planting the seeds for that sort of inquiry and that psyche that actually becomes the seeds for psychology centuries down the road. Now everything is filled with gods. That's a cool statement, and that sounds like he's getting a little bit I don't know, mythical here, but it's not necessarily, because a lot of ancients would place God up there in the heavens, and this kind of this being that's out there and divorced, kind of like a deistic framework where he lays out the mechanics and then the universe just kind of rolls around and he goes away. But that statement, everything is filled with gods, that's a ontological perspective. He's making an ontological he's perceiving the world ontologically and making a statement about the structure of reality, saying that God isn't just separate out there, but the animating thing, the thing that sustains, can be found on the most in the most minute divisions of reality, the most smallest rock, the most smallest particle. God is in that, and that is what is moving reality. And so those statements, number one, everything is filled with water, as in the lecture, that you can actually find something that moves reality. Number two, or you can find a material that actually is the foundation of reality. The second statement, the lodestone has psyche. There is something animating that we can observe, that we can eventually figure out, and that's psyche, psychology. There's something there, animus. And then number three, the number three is, where was I at? Oh, everything is filled with God, meaning God is not up in a platonic heaven, but in the smallest things. So that is
Oh,
how he lays the seeds for observable empirical data later on. And that's how it gets picked up, at least.
I love your
All right, let's fight
argumentation. So
dragon.
you're what you're saying. So what you're saying is that basically, because we can encounter God through everything, you can actually, and it's a rational God that can be found, you can actually study everything empirically and actually prove everything empirically. And that's why that was one of the seeds that actually led to everybody commit to, you know, a more scientific kind of worldview. And I kind of get that, but okay, let's see a little bit more of this. Like when you really think about like the statement, everything is moist or water. Well, you can kind of like think also in terms of like how the opening statements of the Bible also start, like you can actually kind of think in terms of chaotic representation of primordial potential that it's absolutely everywhere. And you can actually think in terms of well, you know that a theist couldn't have been an atheist. It was something completely like regarded as weird and super fringe to be an actual atheist. Like most of these people actually believed in gods. Why would he, of all, even though yeah, I get it, he's making observable, like observations about the world and trying to get to the fundamental, substance of things, kind of like thinking in terms of ontology. But and I'm surely he is changing kind of like this way in which he does epistemology. But at the same time, he's still kind of committed to the idea of gods and spirits and things like this. Like you said it yourself in the other statements. He says everything is made out of God and like everything has kind of like a spirits to be animated. And yeah, sure, you can also observe some of these. You can kind of like see parallels of where you can find observable evidence on some things, but there's some other things that you cannot absolutely prove. Like show me how you're gonna measure, for example, morality. How are you gonna measure that one, huh? How are you gonna measure, for example, let's say, bravery? How are you gonna look at that empirically? Or how are you gonna look at, for example, I don't know, let's say, uh, you know, anything really that cannot really be touched like this? Are you gonna how do you put, for example, the mind itself? How do you put the mind under a microscope?
Hmm. Well, at the time, Thales obviously wouldn't have. He's a natural philosopher, so believes that there is a natural explanation for all things, even things that are apparently, at first blush, not observable by the naked eye. But as we go about through science, we start increasing the tools by which we can observe. And then Aristotle, who's a great empiricist and picks up, you might say, Thales' ontological depth perception that even the smallest things could testify or be filled with gods, meaning that there is truth there. He does lay the seeds for science. That means you need other people gathering data, and so you need a system to support that. Obviously, other people collecting data, other people observing. So how do you determine empirically that something is objectively or empirically good? Ethics, you might say. Well, um, a lot of Philip Foot's philosophy, and she picks this up from Aristotle, believes that for a lion to be good, it has to be able to pursue its value. So, and what does it need to pursue its value? Well, what do lions do? They need to eat gazelles and procreate. And so, what is good for the lion And it takes time to observe the lion in this environment. The lion needs its claws, it needs its teeth, it needs its mane to attract mates and to get frisky with the lionesses. All of that is there. You have to observe that so that, and you can't come up with a good by revelation, you might say that this is what the lion needs. In order to have that in order to know what is good for the lion, not just getting a revelation from the gods what is good, it requires stepping back and observing the lion in its totality, the lion in its environment. And you can determine the good of something by taking a step back, seeing it in its totality. So there again is observation. And you might even say the same thing about humans. What is good for humans? Well, in the religious tradition, you know, that we believe that some religions say that you come about to know what is good for mankind based on revelation. You get some sort of rational structure from the heavens, and now you know it's good. However, you could also go the route of observation. If you take a step back and observe humans in their totality, and know the constraints of an environment and what they are optimized for, you can actually discern what is good through observation. But that takes rigor, that takes time, that takes perspective. But that's all in there. Did I address your question, Mr. Dragon?
You definitely did, Mr. Khaden.
Okay.
I think you really got me on that one, and I love your explanation of it. I'm going to let you go away with this one, but I'm gonna get you the next time. I'm sure of it.
Okay, sounds good, Mr. Dragon.
The dragon's amazing.
Yeah, I love the moving mouth.
All right, guys, we're back. It was very, very, very good sparring, Khaden. Very, very great indeed. The Dragon I think really liked that one. And so, Tom, tell me, how would you rate this game? This sparring?
The thing is, I have a different answer, and I don't know whether the answer was correct because I don't know. I don't know whether it's correct or not. But I do. It's coherent. I do understand it. But I just don't know whether it's because again I have a different answer. I don't know how relevant the answer was. So I'm gonna give it a 4 because I'm contented with it with the answer. And
Absolutely, Tom.
yeah, I'll go with a 4. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what about you, Khaden? How would you rate yourself?
I'll go probably a 3 because I was a little bit long-winded. But that happens when you put someone on the spot with a new question.
It's okay. There's no really time constraint on any of this sparring. You can take as long time as you want. Facing the dragon. But you can decide also however much you want to rate yourself. So are you sure you want to go with 3?
Yeah, I'll go with 3 because I can get a 4 later or a 5. It's not my best performance.
Absolutely. To be fair, Khaden, I think it was very, very good.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
without further ado, Tom, go back to the sparring then. And so,
Wait, do I get to hear Tom's explanation on Thales at some point?
you pick 2 topics to debate against the dragon. If he picks naturalism as well, you might get a chance to hear his perspective. But he's free to pick 2 out of these 3. Which one do you want to go?
The bard is interesting. It's like an anomaly. It's something that I've not encountered in the lecture. I think it might be the Apollonian and Dionysian in relation to Nietzsche. So, and that's interesting. And I don't know.
It's more related to lecture than you would think. But
Okay.
it is purposely a little bit vague so that you don't know exactly what is coming. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that is weird, and I like it because, yeah, I don't know what it is. I'll go with the bard.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go with the bard. The statement is the following: Xenophanes and Heraclitus were some of the earliest thinkers to spot some of the most transcendental truths, because of their ideas having close proximity to Christian thought, from the French, of course, which is why it makes them some of the most important and foundational philosophers of all times. How would you like to debate this? For or against?
Hmm. This is hard. Um, I just thought the Xenophanes was atheist, right? Which is why it makes them some of the most important and foundational philosophers of all time. Yeah, I would agree with that. Ideas having close proximity to Christian thought from the fringe. Some of the earliest thinkers, but some of the most transcendental truths. I'd say I'll go against. I'll go against with this one.
You'll go against?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Let me call in the dragon.
I like the dragon.
All right, Tom. Here we go. Show me what
Right.
you got.
Okay, so the idea of Heraclitus is everything is a change, meaning the problem that I have with that. Like, imagine the truth. I do think that there's a fixed truth. If these thinkers are proximal to Christianity, then truth would be moving, which is very contrary to Christianity. I do believe that there's one truth that is unmovable. God never changes. If you're gonna go with the Platonic definition of like theism, or sorry, a bit more, not Platonic, is a bit more Aquinas definition of it. It's something that is more related or connected to metaphysics. So if metaphysics, logic, and God doesn't move, then this statement is wrong. Additionally, Xenophanes he was moving away from myth, which was the earlier belief of the Presocratic philosophers, and he supposed that we can identify or learn something outside of the myth, which is also, I think, is contrary to Christian thought, because we do think and believe that Christian rose from the dead. Whether we can identify that as the historical fact, whether or not, but it's still categorized within a literary narrative explanation. And most of Jesus's parable is stories. So in order for this statement to be true, something that should be for myth, ideas that is fixed, ideas that is capital truth, should be in place. So I do, however, believe that they are foundation in philosophy and philosophers, because in order for us to prove that those are truths, we need to understand the alternative definition or alternative pathway, which Xenophanes and Heraclitus did try to break. But I would say ultimately they're not proximal to Christianity thought.
I see what your position is, or your perspective is, and I like it, Tom. You know, you're somewhat right that of course these thinkers cannot be too proximal from Christianity, but I think that's also why the statement emphasizes that they are from the French. One thing that actually makes Xenophanes very, very close to Christianity is one of the statements that was revolutionary from all the other thinkers, and it was that in fragment 23, he says, God is one, greatest among gods and men, not all like mortals in body or thought. So he's actually one of the first thinkers from the Greek tradition that is proposing something like monotheism, or at least there is one God at the top of all of the other gods that is the one who makes anything possible. In fragment 26, he also says, he always remains in the same place, moving not at all, not not nor is it fitting for him to go to different places at different times. He starts to get the hint of the first arguments for the unmoved mover, because he also says in fragment 24, all of him sees, all of him thinks, all of him hears. And in fragment 25, he says, but without effort, he shakes all things by the thought of his mind. So Xenophanes, of course, he's a bard, he is a poet. He goes around and he kind of like starts to want to experience reality, but he knows he sees past all of the lies and weird ways of his fellow poets, which are Homer and Hesiod, even though he told his stories. And he is strongly criticizes them because he says like, how can gods be even more disgraceful than even humans? And as a matter of fact, God is not an anthropomorphic God. God cannot have a form of humans like this. We do because it's like a romanticizing this idea, like to Ethiopians they look like the Ethiopians, to Greeks they look like Greeks, and if it were oxen or horses or lions, they would look like oxen, horses, or lions. Of course, he does kind of criticizes religion, but not quite criticizing divinity. And so, to a certain extent, through this more getting closer to experiencing, um, you know, a being itself and thinking about being itself, he actually, I don't know if accidentally or from the fringe, he hits, a bullseye in so many of his thoughts. And Heraclitus, how can we forget about Heraclitus's logos? I mean, come on, like it's the same word that opens John 1. These are some of the thinkers that, even though obviously they didn't know Christianity, or they didn't know about, like, possibly didn't know about the Judaism or the Jewish tradition, they still were getting at some of the hints of what this was, like the proper structure for Christian thought is embedded in some of their thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
even though, like they probably didn't know them. But because of these, they
Mm-hmm.
inject, or they fill a lot of thinkers throughout the ages with all of these ideas because of the mystery and the profoundness, the depth of thought that they have brought into the table, that it's impossible to just completely discard.
Yes, I would say that's a really good rebuttal. But what I would what I would the only refutation that I have is Christianity is not 100% of what Xenophanes and Heraclitus said. So if I do understand that you said that it's the statement is thought from the fringe, um, and we make I don't know the scale of which we are measuring that within the Christianity realm, but I think Christianity would be more fitting with the Aristotelian philosophy, wherein you combine potentiality, which is similar to Heraclitus change, and Parmenides actuality, which is the being itself. So the being of God is something that is unmoved. So, but I understand your point of view regarding Xenophanes, moving from a polytheistic myths of the Greek gods into a monotheism, unmoved mover. But my only criticism to that is if if he also has the idea of eliminating the myth, um, which 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 is very worrying for Christians, because I think myth has a specific fitting in the Christian narrative. So if you eliminate that with, if you eliminate the virgin birth, if you eliminate the burning bush, if you eliminate the miracles that goes on in the Christianity, then a huge chunk of Christianity would collapse. So there are some truths that Xenophanes and Heraclitus are fitting in the Christianity. But I think if you're talking about Christianity as a justification, or something that is objectively aiming, the two philosophers aiming towards to, it's not, it's never close to Christianity. But the actual measurements, I don't know. But I would suspect that it's a bit farther than we would think. I think if the statement is Aristotelian philosophy, probably and Platonic forms, I would probably accept it. But if it's Xenophanes and Socrates, it's farther than Platonic and Aristotelian philosophy.
Absolutely, Tom. That was a very good refutation to the refutation, and I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. And you know what? Next time I'll get you even better. Yeah. Okay. Goodbye. All right, guys, we're back. Very, very good, Tom. And now, so Caden, how would you rate Tom's performance in this sparring?
I would go 4. I would go 4. I'm not fully convinced. I actually have a lot of rebuttals to him, but from within the logic that he is presenting in his arguments, it's sound from his vantage point, and I respect that. So I'm going to give him a 4 based on his rebuttal within the parameters that you laid out. It was really good.
Absolutely. And what about you, Tom? How would you rate yourself?
The thing is, I 100% don't know Heraclitus and Xenophanes, so I can't really know for sure whether my answers are correct. But I think my ultimate question of Aristotle and Platonic are closer to the truth than them. No, I'll go with 3. Fuck it, I'll go with 3.
Okay, absolutely. Sounds perfect. All right, guys. And so with that, we're going back to Hayden. And so you've heard 2 of the different topics. We got one more topic that remains mysterious, which is the love. And you can go back with the Barth because or you can choose back. You had already picked naturalism. So which one would you choose?
Yeah, I love the logos, and I wish we have time to talk about the logos. I got time, but I want to go with the Bard because I want to take another whack at it from an opposing perspective.
You can pick either one, either logos or.
I'm picking the Bard. I'm going with the Bard. I want the logos, but there's something about the Bard I want to explore with this Mr. Dragon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here we go. And so, we've read you've heard Tom's, back and forth with the dragon, and so I'm just gonna call the dragon, and we can give it a go. 1 second.
Okay, let's have fun with this.
All right, Caden, we're back again for another one. Here we go. Show me what you got.
All right, I'm gonna take this argument 2 approaches. I'm gonna first focus on Xenophanes, is that how you say it? And then I'm gonna focus on Heraclitus second. So Xenophene, and I'm gonna talk about politics a little bit, being downstream from religion. So Xenophanes presents this anthropomizing view of the gods, how we just simply pigs would have pig gods, birds would have bird gods, etc., etc. One of the and then I like how that quote because I'm not so familiar with Xenophanes, but he's making an argument for monotheism, that there's a god above all the lower gods, so they're battling it out. Kind of, as that's what I'm getting from what you've shared. Is that kind of a correct assessment of the quote you shared earlier?
That is correct. That is fragment 23 from Xenophanes. It says, God is one, greatest among gods and men, not at all like mortals in body or thought.
Okay. So there's 2 ideas here, actually 3 different philosophers, and they all seem to. So Nietzsche and Heidegger like the pre-Socratics, and I think there's a reason why. And you can see it in their philosophies and the politics that emerge. Hegel kind of has this view of antithesis, antithesis, and synthesis, where different logics from different cultures are battling it out, and what emerges is the world soul, or God, or capital R reason, knowing itself through that flux and through that struggle, and that there is a God that will emerge, and that God is made manifest on earth by the state that wins. So Germany is going to be the state that's going to win in the 19th century, and that's going to be God's mind on earth, so to say, after a historical development leading up to that point. But in times past, it was the Romans, it was the Greeks, etc., etc. But that there is a God that's made manifest through the combat of lower gods. Then you go to Marx, who kind of takes that, who flips Hegel on his head, so to say, and he has a statement about how people's religion are just a reflection of their means of production. So in a feudal system, you're going to have a more feudal looking God, and that's going to be reflected in the Catholic Church. In a Protestant system, or not, sorry, Protestant, in a capitalist system, you're going to have a more Protestant looking deity. And so people will anthropomorphize based not on their necessarily physical traits of what God is, but they're going to create a religion based on the situation, the means of production, and that's going to become their God. And so, yeah, that has a lot of impact on. Well, that's very so that Xenophyte's idea, both the monotheism kind of emerging at the top that influences Hegel, and then you also have that idea of anthropomorphizing influences Marx. That also influences Mussolini as well when he's making the fascist state. All these things are influential politically. Now, Heraclitus, I think he has major influences on through the fringe of Christianity. So I'm going to kind of step out, take a look at Christianity here. So we have a lot of the Bible and the Nicene Council and Catholic the Orthodox that turned into the Catholic, and then there was that split throughout history. But a lot of the ideas that were propagated, I know my history correctly, from Paul, major influence, St. Peter, huge influence in founding the Catholic Church that we have today. But they weren't the only founding apostles. There were other, James was one, St. John was another one, and they kind of had not exactly the same model that emerged. I'm not saying they founded different models at that time, but the ideas and how they got picked up in the religious spheres perpetuated a completely different kind of, you might say, a form of Christianity in the West versus the East. So you got in Turkey, Ephesus, that's where Heraclitus comes from, and that creates Stoicism, and they're talking about the Logos, and that becomes the Gospel of John. Now, if you read the Gospel of John, and that's my favorite text, it reads very differently than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Completely different reading. It is way more mystical, way more a little bit esoteric. It's delicious, but it comes from the grammar is from a different tradition. The grammar is from, well, heavily influenced by Heraclitus. So with those ideas, you got this image of fire quite often appearing in the Gospel of John and Revelations as well. And you have this imagery of this I think is in 3 John, there's this idea of love and knowing God face to face, but you kind of have to change yourself. And there's this idea of this, and this is an ancient idea that gets spread, especially it makes its way to the East, into Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy, this idea that God is in everlasting burnings. And the fire that burns, let's just say God is a seraph or a burning being, and you have to become a burning being yourself to actually, you have to change yourself into that order. So you got that image of fire, and this is all fringe stuff, man. Like, and this is like this fringe Heraclitean thinking with fire and flux. It's kind of in the Gnostic spheres as well. Kind of like there's pockets of it everywhere. It's not part of the main structure of Catholicism. And that has influence on the fringes of Christianity throughout history. And there's a lot of tension there because it's influencing Gnostic thinkers, and they have these images of fiery ascents and whatnot. And that's there. And you can see there's conflict between the Mother Catholic Church and the Gnostic sects through the Crusades, yada, yada. So that does have influence. It does have conflict. Although on the fringes. And so, yeah, you can, if you step outside of the Catholic dogma, and even kind of outside of the Orthodox dogma, and you get into some of these Gnostic ideas, you'll start to see this image of fire, this image of world is chaos, and you have to emerge out of this world, out of the chaotic flux of reality, or the chaotic flux of this reality, and get out of Plato's cave, kind of get to the place of stability, get to the place of God. Very, very much in a lot of these Gnostic or pseudo-Gnostic or Gnostic adjacent groups. Cool stuff. But that does back influence Christianity through the millennia. And that does stem from John, St. John, which he's picking up the grammar from Ephesus. Cool stuff. So, one more point I want to add to that argument with influencing foundational philosophers. Heidegger, in the reunion speech before World War II, and he's kind of making a rallying speech to justify Germany going on the offensive to attack. He actually quotes Heraclitus to justify his position. He says that war is the father of all products, or war is the producer of all goods, something of that sort. But there's that idea that through conflict, once again, through the change, and he's quoting Heraclitus, that something emerges, and that is a thought, that is a you might say in certain circles of Christianity, that's a mysterious thought, that through death and rebirth, through conflict, struggle, the logos or the God will emerge. So that is influential, and that would be my argument for how Xenophon and Heraclitus have these fringe influences on the outskirts of Christianity that seep in. By the way, well, one more additional thing about Heraclitus, about Heidegger and Hegel and Marx particularly, and what's in the air in Germany. Germans, there's this group called the Rhineland Mystics, very, very Gnostic in their worldview, and they're kind of picking up on these. The seeds are in their theology, you could say. The seeds are in their philosophy. The Rhineland Mystics influence and their whole world mythology of stepping out of the world of flux to transcendence, or to stability, that actually feeds into a lot of German philosophy. You can look at the work of John Vervaeke on this. He talks a lot about that, and that you can see how that influences the German philosophers of Marx, Hegel, and Heidegger, who I referenced. So there we go.
Wonderful, Khaden. I really
take
love.
Take a bite of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I like it. This is very, very good. Like very elaborate and very well thought form of defending this statement. But how about this?
Okay.
I'm not going to refute the fact that they have a wonderful, wonderful foundational meat that a lot of philosophers throughout the ages were able to, consume to be able to produce even better, or build on top of their shoulders, so to speak. But one thing that I'm going to focus on is, well, let's take a look at how proximal to Christianity is it really, because, well, wouldn't you say that one of the reasons why Nietzsche and Heidegger love these thinkers so much is because they have powerful hints of deconstructionism? And how can, from like always being, deconstructing and questioning and building up on the hermeneutics of suspicion of like institutions and authority, how can these actually have any room within Christianity when Christianity is so much about authority, when Christianity has a big emphasis on obedience and on assuming, personal and individual responsibility, but also assuming the responsibilities and sharing the burdens of others along the way as well. Not, without obviously tossing aside the idea of having reverence for authority or for, anything that gives us our roots, like our fathers or our institutions and things like that. So how can, like thinkers that are so, what would you say, uh, allergic to tradition or to continuing some type of legacy and actually directly confront the tradition that they have inherited. How can these actually be Christian?
How can these ideas that you might say that are being proposed by Nietzsche and Heidegger actually be Christian? Is that what you're kind of getting at when they're so allergic to tradition?
Yeah, like
Hmm.
Heidegger and Nietzsche, you mentioned as well. Was part of the thing that influenced a lot figures like Marx and
Hmm.
uh, other thinkers that like some of the leading ones, Nietzsche, that were suspicious about anything that has to do with inheriting some type of tradition, but not only that, more in the sense of like being told what to do just because, and not really actually going out there and experimenting it. It's like
Mm.
this sort of like big emphasis on suspicion against institutions. And if thinkers such as Nietzsche and Heidegger, found their inspiration in a lot of these pre-Socratic philosophers, which were actually, in a sense, also deconstructing everything that was around them and trying to impose different ideas, or like put forward different ideas from observable evidence. How can this sort of a spirit of like always challenging and questioning institutions be Christian when Christianity is so much about obedience and respect for authority and
Mm.
institutions?
I think, and then I think how a German would argue in the 19th century against that. I mean, more liberal thinking German, because the Germans do focus on obedience, but they do. I think you got to ask, what is Christianity exactly? Is it this thing that emerged from? I mean, we understand that there is original Christianity at some point, but then it turns into historic Christianity, and so you got schools of Peter popping up, schools of James popping up, and the world's not as interconnected as it was now back then, and so even throughout the course of history, the Catholic Church is running amok of things and struggling with certain things, and then you got the Irish Christians who kind of hold Christianity and stabilize it, while the whole continental Europe is going crazy. They're kind of on this little lonely isle, and drama doesn't hit them as quickly because they're isolated and they become a hinge point. But with all that saying, so I'm trying to redefine Christianity may not be a set of values that people ascribe to it necessarily. And this can be argued with Martin Luther, Protestant reformer, who is the hero, by the way, of the German, that is the German way, which all these philosophers, Hegel, Heidegger, Nietzsche, I mean, they all stem from that tradition. They come from German's hero, Martin Luther, who he questioned the Catholic Church and hammered the 95 Thesis. So, what does that create downstream from that? Well,
This is
then they
exactly
have
my
a different
point.
form of
Like,
Christianity. What was
so
that?
this is exactly my point, that whenever
Mm-hmm.
you have a spirit of schism or a spirit of
Mm-hmm.
deconstructionism, it always ends up in a multiplicity of forms where you cannot really distinguish
Precisely.
what the really whole is. And so how can something so, so full of this deconstruction sentiment be actually considered somehow Christianity?
Yeah, because they would, and I would say the justification um, for that is from Hegel's perspective and from Marx and from Heidegger is that the person who is what will emerge, that they would obviously view that the historic Christianity is false or gone amok or isn't God's reason on earth, and how who determines what's the true form of Christianity or the true form of religion, um, whether that's going to be a Christianity involving Hitler or whatnot, will be the person whose logic wins on top, the person whose might makes right. Very dangerous philosophy. I'm not saying I agree with that stance, but that is their justification, and that's their form of Christianity. And so you can see that is a form of Christianity on the that is a false form of Christianity, or you might even say a reactionary form of Christianity. Because I don't, the Catholic Church has had issues, done some bad things. Same with the Orthodox. Same with every institution. It gets big. It's going to create corruption. People are going to come on the fringe. They're going to pick up, some dead philosopher from millennia. All these ideas sound good. Then they're going to swing completely the other way, and now they're going to just attack, pendulum swing. And so those are how these ideas of Heraclitus, these ideas of Xenophanes, are influencing the fringes of Christianity, the philosophies on the fringes, and it's dangerous when those fringes move in and take the centerpiece of Christianity. Then you have World War II. Then you have serious death tolls. So,
Wonderful,
I hope
Kane.
that makes sense.
Kane.
I'm saying I don't agree it's Christianity necessarily, what Heidegger and Nietzsche. I don't believe that their ideas are flowing from a pure form of Christianity, but it is a form of Christianity to their minds, and it is a form of truth, and it's it creates conflict. Obviously, we don't get along. We kill each other.
That's wonderful, Kate. And I actually, I have to say that it was very, very well formulated, and I somewhat agree with your ideas, but it's not gonna be for long. Next time I'm gonna get you. I hope to see you back in another episode for sure, because I'm gonna be even more prepared, man. All right.
Yeah.
I say it.
It's so fun.
All right, guys, and we're back. Wonderful, wonderful exchange. So, Tom, how would you rate Caden's performance?
I like how elaborative it was. I kind of seem to be educational because it's my blind spot. I don't know anything about Hegel. It's only through Peterson Academy that I got to know the guy. Heidegger, and I know that he's a Nazi, and I know about he's a little bit, but I don't know anything about the history throughout that. And I also like how he used the multiplicity into one unified thing, and also use Luther as someone who is a Christian who's also combating another Christian organization, but is also forming into this kind of like reformation into actual Christianity. And the reason why I give it a 4 because I'm a bit technical, because the statement here is earliest thinker, that's correct. To spot some, that's correct, of the most transcendental truths, and I have a trouble with that if you're going to use Xenophanes and Heraclitus, because I feel that Aristotle and Plato is a bit more closer to that, and maybe I probably would use Immanuel Kant with the idea of identifying which Christianity. I really like the elaboration of that, because what is Christianity, like, if we're going to ask yourself that, right? So is Christianity from Martin Luther's Reformation, or is it from the Catholic Church, or is it now, or is it, it's a condition. So it kind of is a noumena from a Kant's perspective, and phenomena is something that we get from there. So I think it's a bit more Kantian. So I was looking for that answer, but I would give it a solid 4 because I'm contented. I find it really coherent, and I've learned from it, and it's not far from what we're discussing. So I loved it. I loved the answer.
Beautiful. And what about you, Caden? How would you rate yourself?
Yeah, this is my first time articulating those thoughts. Oh, by the way, Tom, Philosophy of Politics Part 1. If you want a history of Hegel, Heidegger, all of that, excellent course to take by Hicks.
Okay.
I just finished that course, so it's fresh on my mind.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That's where I'm pulling a lot of those facts from. But I would give myself a 3, and here's why. The rhetoric was difficult because I'm starting at the roots of Heraclitus, and I'm going quite literally on a limb, trying to pluck the philosophical fruits from the seeds or the roots of Heraclitus, and it's really hard to go that far on a limb and then rhetorically graft it back to the roots. Hard to make those connections when you are covering that much history and you're going that far out. So I'll give myself a 3 on that. The arguments make sense in my head. Explaining it is way more difficult.
I think you could rate yourself higher than that, Khaden. But it's up to you.
Yeah.
I think you did very, very good, Caden. It was an amazing, actually, like, I think you did amazingly well, like explaining the whole history. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to give you, yeah, because you have been a little bit harsh on yourself, I'm gonna give you an opportunity. We're gonna toss a coin, or actually, we're gonna toss this die. If the die pick three numbers from 1 to 6.
246.
2, 4, 6. Um
Is it dice?
if the die lands in any of those, I'm gonna grant you +2 points. Just because I think that you have debated very good, and really, at the end of the day, all of these statements, they were something that you have to just defend out of the blue, and so it's, you're doing like amazingly for, like, just
Mhm.
coming up like fresh to like these statements and then just defending it. So I
I
think it's
agree.
it's an amazing thing. So okay, you guys ready? Here we go. Let's see. Oh, you're not in luck today, man. You got a number 3. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Caden. I tried. I tried. But better luck next time, though. All right. And without further ado, Tom,
Mhm.
we got the last round of a sparing
Yep.
against Logos.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Here we go. Heraclitus's logos was the prototypical idea of the One, which developed later in Neoplatonism. Philosophers and thinkers keep discovering this because reality is made by and for the logos of creation, which in fact further confirms the promise made in John 1. Would you like to be for or against this statement?
Why did I pick this one? I actually don't know what logos meant with Heraclitus definition. Um, okay, Heraclitus logos was the prototypical idea of the one which developed later in Neoplatonism, philosophy and thinking. Keep discovering this because reality is it made and for the logos of creation. In fact, further confirms the promise made in John 1.
So, if it helps, I will read you some of the fragments from Heraclitus's
Yeah,
fragments
that would
that
be nice.
actually show a little bit of what
Sorry, that's a
his
bit cheating.
doctrine of the Logos is. No, absolutely. So, fragment 10, for example, it says, "Things taken together are whole and not whole. Something being brought together and brought apart, in tune and out of tune. Out of all things, there comes a unity, and out of a unity, all things." Fragment 50 says, "Listening not to me, but to the Logos, it is wise to agree that all things are one." Fragment 51 says, "They do not understand how, being at variance with itself, it agrees with itself. It is a backwards attunement, like that of the bow and lyre."
Right.
Fragment 41. Sorry, this is fragments for other stuff. This is about wisdom. But fragment 115 says the soul has a self-increasing logos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of, hints there as well. Fragment 112 says, "Right thinking is the greatest excellence, and wisdom is to speak the truth and act in accordance with nature while paying attention to it."
Okay. I'm sorry, there's a bit of cheat here. But I'll based on that definition, I'll go with 4. Because for me, it kind of makes sense with the Neoplatonism idea. So yeah, I'll go with 4. Let's go, Dragon. Let's go.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna call the dragon and be right back. All right, here we are back one more time. Show me what you got about this one.
Okay, I'm gonna go with it to start with. I'm gonna go with a disclaimer because I actually don't know. It is a blind spot for me. But I would say the definition of that kind of makes sense with the idea of Neoplatonism because Neoplatonism has levels of reality, kind of like forming at the very top with some kind of like a unified, universal idea, which kind of makes sense of what Heraclitus was saying. But I worry with the promise. How is that related to John? With, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So for me, that interpretation kind of means Jesus. Not necessarily mean to say a Neoplatonism higher consciousness of universal consciousness, but for me, it's the entire New Testament for me has a lot of Greek ideas coming from Neoplatonism. It's it's the idea of a myth and narrative, and forming everything into a single episode from the from the life of Christ into what actually happened in the very beginning of the creation. It actually points back to it, and it has this unity within those fragmentation of stories is kind of like unified into one. So with that example of the Bible and the New Testament and the Neoplatonism of unified consciousness in reality, plus Heraclitus' unification of ideas, it would one would necessarily would connect that and say they are a kind of like it says a prototypical idea that developed from that. So, and it's interesting. I probably this is not an answer, but I find that really insightful of how it started from Heraclitus. And now that I wonder whether Plato's Neoplatonism idea and the Gospel of John or New Testament all came from kind of like derived from Heraclitus' idea. So I'm sorry if I answered that with a question, but I find that intriguing. So yeah, I'm gonna end with that it kind of confirms all the connection from it.
Absolutely, but wouldn't you say though that Heraclitus's logos, it's even though yes, it does explain a lot of these sort of ideas of the one and the gathering of the many into the one into a whole, and the emanation from the top down and the emergence from the bottoming and the whole process being one. Wouldn't you say that it's still kind of like impersonal? Like within the Bible, we actually know Christ to be the Logos, and it's a personal being which with which you have a relationship with. It actually gives you purpose because you have a relationship with it. But Heraclitus's Logos is something more, you know, outside of this sort of um, stream of ideas in the sense that the logos is just actually that is the way in which reality is structured. It has nothing to do, it doesn't care for you or about you. It's more just how things are and how you are able to comprehend the whole world, how it is all interconnected into this big sort of like cloud of relationships with each other.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And that's a really good rebuttal because that's you're making a case of theism versus pantheism, isn't it? Oh no, yeah, pantheism, where is everything is connected versus to an actual personal relationship with God, and that is why I did wonder why this statement connected to John 1, because in the words in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God is pertaining to Jesus. Um, so it kind of was a God coming down as becoming a human and becoming more, connected with us like interpersonally. So, but I would say just because it was interpersonal doesn't necessarily um, eliminate the possibility of still having a pantheism idea. It can still be connected, um, even though there's an interpersonal relationship with Jesus. Now, this is maybe a bit heretical. Um, I'm the type of Christian that is a non-Trinitarian, meaning to say I do think that it's more of a suspicion or a speculation that Jesus is not really God. Oh no, sorry, Jesus is that's so horrible. Sorry, Jesus is God, and there's God the Father. So there is still a metaphysical, God the Father, and that still kind of keeps up with that Neoplatonism idea and being one, while still having an interpersonal relationship with Jesus. So with that idea connected together, there's still a possibility that theism can still exist with pantheism. So it still wouldn't eliminate it.
Interesting. Really, I have to be honest with you, Tom. It's hard for me to debate against this because I think that when it says that it's the prototypical idea, I actually think that it had some of the most important things that you can actually get from what it means to be the logos. But the only ace that I had in my deck was just trying to refute the fact that they are kind of very different from being personal being Jesus God, having a purpose for you, and the logos just having like the structure of it. So I think that with that, I'm gonna leave it at that, and next time I'm for sure gonna get you, man. All right, Tom. Oh no, Khaden first. How would you rate Tom?
Oh yeah, I'll give him. Yeah, I'll go with the
Honest.
3 on this one. Sorry, but
No,
I do
all right.
understand this was a blind spot for you. And it's hard to. This is the logos is such. I mean, as Or says, there's literally hundreds of dissertations written on the logos. So this is deep weeds. And if a blind spot for sure. But I found your argument consistent. It was good. The only weakness in your argument is you were kind of on a sandy foundation from which you were arguing from, and that's because of lack of you might say a lack of being informed, studying this particular topic. But if you were to study this topic and come back at a later time, I'd be scared to debate you on this. So
Absolutely. And Tom, how would you rate yourself on this one?
I can't. I don't know whether I get the gist of it. Again, I don't know whether my answer is correct or not. So I'm just hovering around my ideas, but not knowing whether it's true or correct. So I'll probably give it a. I don't want to be mean to myself. I'll go with a 3. I think I can definitely do much better, but should I give it a 2? No, I'll go with a 3. I think.
Oh, 3.
Yeah, I think.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll go with a 3. I'll go with a 3.
Absolutely, Tom. Absolutely. And with that, that has been the folks. And it was a very good one, I have to say. Thank you so much for participating in this. Um, by the way, one thing that I would love to clarify as well is that there's not really like a specific, there are obviously right answers, but all of these sort of statements are kind of designed for people to have their own position about them. You know what I mean? Like I can have my opinion on them, and we all can have our opinions on them. But it's the whole point of it is to kind of like from your own perspective, how would you like to see the world, and then can you defend it from what we know? From what we have been studying on philosophy and all of these things. And I think both of you have done an amazing job defending your ideas and playing in the game. And with that, Tom, you scored 22, and Khaden, you scored 20. So, Tom, you're actually tied with Joshua right now in points. Obviously, you can come back more times, like up to 3 times, and you can build up your score towards like the final, the meta game, so to speak, for this season of Dragon Slayers. You have won this
Nice.
this episode of Dragon Slayers, but it was very, very close, only by 2 points. And it was so close because you guys would have been tied as well, and you would have to do again the dice if you would have won the dice, Khaden. So it was a little bit of bad luck on this one, but like it was a good one, man. Thank you so much, both of you. And so you're the king of PA, tied with Joshua, at least for now, until next one.
Hey.
Yeah.